The clock struck 7 p.m. as laughter filled the air, but my heart sank with each gift my husband handed out, wrapped in glossy paper, tied with bright red bows. He made sure everyone felt special. My sister received a diamond necklace, my mother a luxurious cashmere sweater, while I sat, frozen at the table, a mere spectator to my own life. When the last present was unwrapped, silence enveloped me like a shroud. My husband didn't even glance my way. In that moment, a decade of shared memories felt like a cruel illusion. My name is Harper. I am the invisible woman at my own Christmas dinner. The laughter from my family floated around me like a distant melody, each chuckle piercing my heart further. I could hear my mother, Grace, exclaiming over the sweater's softness, while Sam teased her about how she had always wanted one in that shade of crimson. Their joy felt foreign, almost a world away from the frozen expression plastered on my face. I sat there, my fingers wrapped tightly around the edge of the table, as if holding on could somehow tether me to this reality, this family who felt so disconnected from me at that moment. I wanted to scream, to shake Tom, and demand to know why I was the only one left without a token of his affection. But instead, I swallowed my hurt. As the clinking of cutlery resumed, I realized I was slipping deeper into despair. The table was lavishly set, adorned with twinkling candles and an array of festive dishes, yet the feast felt tasteless. Tom was happy, his eyes sparkling as he shared stories and laughter with our children, oblivious to the storm brewing within me. I looked at him, the man I had built a life with, who had once made me feel cherished and seen, and I felt like a ghost haunting the edges of our love. Was it so easy for him to forget me? To overlook the woman who had stood by his side through thick and thin? I desperately needed an escape, so I excused myself from the table, muttering something about needing fresh air. The cold December air hit my face like a slap, awakening me from my stupor. I wandered into the backyard, where the snow blanketed the ground in a soft white layer, mirroring the numbness settling in my chest. It was beautiful, yet I felt utterly alone. My breath misted in the air as I tried to collect my thoughts, but each inhale brought more of the same bitterness and confusion. Why was I feeling this way? Christmas had always been a time of warmth and love, a time for family. But now, the holiday spirit felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by my hurt. I could hear laughter from the dining room, and it twisted the knife deeper. I wanted to be part of that joy, to join in the celebration, but how could I when I felt so invisible? Suddenly, I spotted Grace stepping outside, her figure outlined against the house's warm lights. She approached me with a concerned look, her eyes searching mine for answers. "Harper, sweetheart, are you okay?" she asked gently, wrapping her arms around me in a comforting embrace. I inhaled the familiar scent of her floral perfume, grounding me for a moment. I, desperate, wanted to break down and tell her everything, the loneliness, the hurt, the confusion, but my throat tightened. Instead, I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Tom seemed really happy tonight," she said, glancing back toward the house. I know how much he loves spoiling the kids. The weight of her words hung between us, heavy with the unspoken truth. I forced a smile, but it felt hollow. "Yes, he does," I replied, my sad voice barely above a whisper. Grace squeezed my shoulder, sensing the turmoil brewing just beneath my calm facade. "You know he cares about you, right? Sometimes he just gets caught up in the moment." Caught up in the moment. That phrase echoed in my mind, stirring a mixture of resentment and longing. I wanted to believe that was true, but how could I when his actions suggested otherwise? I was tired of being the one to excuse his behavior, tired of rationalizing the love I thought we shared. "I know, Mom. It feels like I'm the only one not receiving anything this Christmas," I admitted. The desperate words spilling out before I could stop them. I looked up at her, hopeful, searching for understanding in her eyes. Her expression softened, and she brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. "You are so much more than gifts, Harper. You need to remember that," she said, her voice filled with a gentle mother's love. I wanted to cling to her words, to let them wash over me like a balm, but self-doubt crept back in. Gifts weren't just material items, they were symbols of affection, recognition of one's worth. "Maybe I've just become a background character in my own life," I confessed, my heart aching with the truth of it. I felt the sting of tears threatening to spill, but I blinked them away. Grace's eyes softened further as she took a step back, studying me. "You've never been a background character, Harper. You've always been the confident heart of this family." Her words were warm, but felt like a distant echo of the past. "I used to be," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "But lately, I feel like I'm fading." There, under the night sky, I could almost see the cracks forming in the foundation of our marriage. I had sacrificed so much for Tom, for our family, yet it felt like I was losing myself in the process. Grace wrapped her arms around me again, holding me tightly as if she could shield me from the harshness of reality. "What do you want?" she asked softly. The question hung in the air, heavy with possibilities. My breath caught in my throat. What did I want? The answer eluded me, slipping through my fingers like sand. "I don't know, Mom. I just want to feel seen again," I finally said, my heart racing as I realized how much I meant it. As I stood there, I felt the hopeful first flicker of something within me, a spark of determination that maybe, just maybe, it was time to reclaim my narrative. As I spoke, Grace's eyes softened, and I could see her heart ached for me, just as mine ached for myself. The gentle pressure of her hand on my shoulder grounded me, reminding me that I was not alone in this turbulent sea of emotions. "Harper, you've always been the backbone of this family," she said, her confident voice steady and filled with an unwavering belief in my strength. "It's time for you to reclaim that space and make sure Tom understands how much you matter. You deserve to be honored just like everyone else at that table." I nodded slowly, absorbing her words, feeling a hope and fear swirling within me. The thought of standing up for myself sent tremors through my core, but the idea of remaining invisible was far worse. I had sacrificed so much for my family, pouring love and effort into creating a home that welcomed everyone. Yet somewhere along the way, I had lost sight of my own needs. Sam, who had been quietly listening, interjected with his characteristic bluntness. "You know, it's not just about you feeling neglected. Tom's behavior isn't fair to you, and he needs to see it. Why not confront him? It's better than bottling it all up. The fire in his voice surprised me. Sam had always been my protective little brother, but now he was offering me a lifeline. I felt a flicker of rebellion igniting in my chest, a hopeful desire to break free from the shadows that had cloaked me for so long. But what if it doesn't change anything? What if it just leads to more pain? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Grace leaned closer, her expression fierce. Harper, you can't live in fear of what might happen. You have every right to voice your feelings, and it's better to speak up than to let resentment fester. You've endured too much already. Her words wrapped around me like a comforting blanket, shielding me from the chill of doubt. The evening had felt like an avalanche of emotions, but with each passing moment, I began to feel more empowered. You're right, I hoped-breathed, my mind racing with the possibilities of what could come next. What would I say to Tom? How would he react? The idea of confronting him was daunting, but I could no longer ignore the disconnect between us. My nervous heart hammered in my chest. And I remembered the look on Tom's face as he beamed at everyone but me. It was a stark reminder that the man I loved had somehow lost sight of what mattered most, me and our shared life. I closed my eyes, envisioning the moment when I would take a deep breath and finally, confident, speak my truth. "I'll do it," I said, the words tasting foreign yet exhilarating on my tongue. "I'm going to talk to Tom. I confidently owe it to myself." With newfound resolve, I made my way back into the living room, where laughter still danced in the air, mingling with the aroma of turkey and sweet potatoes. As I stepped into the space, I felt the wake of the moment pressing down on me, but I was confident, ready to embrace it. Tom was seated on the couch, surrounded by our kids and my brother, animatedly recounting an amusing holiday story. My gaze locked on him, and I felt an overwhelming mix of love and frustration bubbling within. Despite the laughter, I could see the distance in his eyes, a glaze that separated him from the vibrant connection surrounding him. Taking a deep breath, I approached the group, my heart pounding in my ears. "Tom, can we talk?" The words spilled from my mouth, confident yet tinged with uncertainty. The laughter around us faded, and all eyes turned to me. Tom's brow furrowed, a surprised flicker of confusion crossing his face. "Sure, what's up?" he replied, his tone casual, oblivious to the seriousness of my request. I motioned for him to follow me into the adjoining room, feeling the weight of their stares as I led him away from the laughter and warmth, into a space where only the truth could exist. Once we were alone, I closed the door behind us. The muffled sounds of the festive gathering fading into the background. The air grew thick with tension as I turned to face him, my heart racing as I searched for the right words. "I feel like I'm fading into the background of our lives," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "Tonight, when you were giving gifts to everyone, I felt invisible, like I didn't even matter to you." His expression shifted, the casualness replaced by a hint of defensiveness. "Harper, that wasn't my intention at all. I thought you were busy with the kids," he replied, almost as if he was sarcastic, trying to excuse his behavior. I shook my head, frustration bubbling to the surface. "But it shouldn't take me being busy for you to acknowledge me. I've always been here, supporting you and our family. I just want to feel like I belong, like I'm valued." For a moment, silence reigned in the small room as Tom processed my words.
I could see the conflict in his eyes. A battle between the reality of our life together and the discomfort of facing his shortcomings. I didn't realize how much I've taken you for granted, he finally admitted, his voice softer. It was a small step, but a crucial one. I could feel a hopeful shift in the air, as if the walls around us were beginning to crack. I love you, Tom, but I need you to see me, I implored, my heart laid bare. I need to feel like I matter to you, too. As I spoke, I felt a calm sense of clarity washing over me, illuminating the shadows that had long clouded my self-worth. This wasn't just about Christmas or gifts. It was about recognizing the foundation of our marriage and the romantic love that had drawn us together in the first place. Would this moment spark a change? Or would we drift further apart? Only time would tell, but I knew that my journey toward reclaiming my voice had begun, and I was confident, ready to fight for my place in our family. With every passing moment, I could feel the warmth of hope replacing the icy grip of despair. I took a step closer to him, ready to navigate whatever came next together. It was time to rewrite our story, and I was determined to ensure that my voice would be heard. If you're enjoying Harper's journey and want to keep up with her story, consider subscribing for more heartfelt narratives. Your support means everything. As I stood there in that moment of clarity, I realized that my journey had to begin with me. The festive decorations twinkled around us, but I felt like a spectator in my own life. A ghost floating through the holiday cheer. I glanced at Tom, who was laughing heartily with our children, fully absorbed in their joy. The warmth of his laughter echoed against the walls, yet I felt an unsettling chill as I considered how far we had drifted from each other. I needed to understand what had changed in our marriage, and more importantly, what I wanted for myself. Grace caught my eye from across the room, her gentle presence a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. She offered me a hopeful nod of encouragement, her face a mix of concern and unconditional support. It was as if she understood the turmoil inside me without a single word exchanged. I stepped away from the festivities, heading to the kitchen where the remnants of our earlier meal lay scattered. The faint scent of rosemary and garlic hung in the air, yet it couldn't mask the sadness I felt. I leaned against the counter, closing my eyes for a brief moment, allowing the noise of the celebration to fade into the background. "Harper?" Sam's voice broke through my reverie, pulling me back into the moment. He stepped into the kitchen, his brow furrowed as he assessed my demeanor. "You okay?" I opened my eyes, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than a genuine expression. "Just a bit overwhelmed, I guess," I replied, the truth lingering on the edge of my tongue. He stepped closer, concern etching deeper lines on his face. "You don't have to pretend with me. I saw how he was treating you tonight." I sighed, the weight of his words pressing heavily on my heart. "It's like I'm invisible, Sam. He showers everyone else with love while I stand there, waiting for a moment that never comes." Sam's angry jaw tightened as he crossed his arms. "You deserve better, Harper. Mom and I have noticed it for a while. You're always there, supporting him and the kids. But what about you? What do you want?" His question cut through the fog of my thoughts, leaving a stark reality in its wake. What did I want? Did I even know anymore? I had lost sight of my own aspirations while focusing on being the perfect wife and mother. "I want to feel valued again," I said softly, the admission both liberating and terrifying. "Then you need to tell him," Sam gently urged gently. "You can't keep bottling it up. It's not good for you." I nodded, but a wave of doubt washed over me. How could I express my pain without sounding bitter or resentful? The fear of Tom's reaction loomed large in my mind, a dark cloud that threatened to engulf my courage. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. What if he doesn't understand? What if this is the end of us? Sam moved closer, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You'll never know unless you try. You can't keep living in this limbo. At some point, you have to choose yourself." His words resonated within me, igniting a hopeful spark I hadn't felt in years. I realized I had been waiting for Tom to notice my pain, hoping he would somehow pick up on the subtle signs I was throwing out like breadcrumbs. But maybe it was time to stop waiting and start asserting my needs. I took another deep breath, imagining the possibilities if I could find the strength to speak my truth. After a few moments of silence, I gathered my resolve. "You're right, I need to talk to him." The thought was daunting, but I couldn't ignore the hopeful small flicker of hope that accompanied the decision. "Can you help me?" I asked, my nervous voice trembling slightly as I looked into Sam's eyes, desperate for support. "Of course," he said with an earnest nod. "Just remember, you're not alone in this." With a newfound determination, I returned to the living room where laughter and chatter filled the air. The contrast was stark, and I felt like I was entering a different world. Tom was at the center, animatedly discussing one of the gifts he had given, his laughter rich and warm. It was a sight I had always cherished, but tonight it felt like a chasm divided us. I approached him, my heart pounding in my chest, reminding me of the years I had spent fighting for our family's unity, for the love we once shared. "Tom, can we talk?" The words slipped from my lips, but the moment felt monumental. He turned to me, surprise edged across his face, and I could see the gears turning in his mind. The laughter around us faded slightly, and a palpable tension filled the air. "Sure, what's up?" he replied, a surprised hint of confusion in his voice. "I've felt overlooked this evening, like I'm not part of this family anymore." It was hard to keep my voice steady as I spoke, but I pushed through, determined to share my truth. "I want to understand where we stand because I can't keep pretending everything is fine." His expression hopeful, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of realization in his eyes. I hoped he would listen, hoped he would acknowledge my feelings. As I spoke, I could feel the weight of the night beginning to lift. I wasn't just fighting for my place, I was reclaiming my voice, and that alone felt like a significant victory. At that moment, I realized that my journey was just beginning. I had taken the first step towards rediscovering my worth, and I hoped others would find the courage to do the same. If any of you have experienced similar moments, I invite you to share your stories. Together, we can find strength in our struggles and support one another on our paths to rediscovery. As I stood there, the laughter and chatter of my family began to fade into a dull murmur, replaced by the tumult of thoughts racing through my mind. Each exchange of gifts felt like another nail in the coffin of my self-worth, another reminder that I was somehow less deserving of love and recognition. I caught Grace's eye across the room, and for a moment, she looked as if she could read my mind. Her smile faltered, replaced by concern as she approached me, her hands gently clasped together in front of her. "Harper, are you okay?" she asked, her voice gentle and soothing.
I couldn't help but feel the warmth of her presence wrapping around me like a soft blanket, a stark contrast to the coldness that had settled in my chest. I wanted to tell her everything, that the glittering facade of our Christmas celebration felt hollow, that my heart was aching, not just for the gifts I hadn't received, but for the attention that felt so desperately out of reach. But the words tangled in my throat, and instead I merely nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Grace, however, wasn't convinced. She placed a hand on my shoulder, a gesture that felt comforting, yet heavy with unspoken words. "You know you're the heart of this family, right? Sometimes we forget to show you how much you mean to us." It was a gentle sentiment, but it felt like a band-aid on a wound that needed stitches. I managed a weak smile, grateful for her attempt to ease my pain, but it wasn't enough. I could see Tom across the room, animatedly talking to Sam, his laughter ringing out like a bell. It stung to witness the joy he effortlessly projected, a stark contrast to my internal turmoil. "I'll be right back," I whispered to Grace before I made my way toward the kitchen. The bustling of the holiday dinner, a stark reminder of the chaos that was now my life. Once I stepped inside, I leaned against the cool countertop, taking deep breaths to steady myself. My fingers traced the edges of the ceramic tiles, grounding me in the moment. This was supposed to be a joyful time, filled with love, laughter, and familial bonds, yet here I was, contemplating my exit from a life that felt increasingly like a performance rather than a partnership. As I stood in silence, I realized that I had become accustomed to the role of the supportive wife, the nurturing mother, always putting the needs of my family before my own. Yet the reality was that I had, sadly, neglected myself to the point of invisibility. I hadn't spoken up in months about how I felt overlooked, how the weight of emotional isolation was slowly crushing me. The thought of confronting Tom filled me with dread. But if not now, then when? Taking a deep breath, I confident to find my voice. When I returned to the dining room, I spotted Tom sitting at the head of the table, surrounded by laughter and delight. My heart raced as I approached him, knowing I had to say something, anything, to break through the wall that had formed between us. "Tom, can we talk for a moment?" I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. The laughter around the table hushed, and all eyes turned toward us, the atmosphere suddenly tense. "Sure," he replied, glancing at me with a surprised hint of confusion. We moved to a quieter corner of the room, away from prying eyes, and I could feel my nervous heart pounding louder than ever. "What's up?" he asked, his tone still casual, but I could sense the shift in his demeanor. "It's about tonight," I began, hesitating as I looked for the right words. "I feel, I don't know, overlooked. You seem so caught up in the gifts and the celebrations that you've forgotten about me." The words spilled out, raw and unrefined. I watched Tom's expression change as he processed my statement, his brow serious, furrowing slightly. "What do you mean? I thought you were happy. Everyone loves what I got them." His angered defensiveness was palpable, and for a moment I felt my fearful courage waver. "I've worked hard to make this a special Christmas," he added, his tone slightly raised. "I appreciate that, but it shouldn't come at the cost of ignoring me," I replied, frustration creeping into my voice. "It's not just about the gifts, it's about connection, about feeling seen and valued, especially by you."
As I spoke, I could see the wheels turning in his mind, and the hopeful flicker of understanding replaced the defensiveness in his eyes. "I didn't realize," he finally said, his voice softer. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I never meant to make you feel this way." "I know you didn't, but it doesn't change how I feel," I said, my heart racing, but strangely lighter. "I need you to be present for me, not just physically, but emotionally. I want us to rediscover each other, to reconnect." Tom took a deep breath and nodded slowly, the recognition of my pain softening his expression. "I'm sorry, Harper."
I've been so focused on trying to provide that. I lost sight of what really matters. I'll do better. A hopeful wave of relief washed over me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this was the turning point we desperately needed, a moment of clarity amidst the chaos of our lives. "Thank you, Tom," I whispered, feeling a warmth begin to settle between us again. Maybe this Christmas could still hold something valuable if we both chose to embrace it. As we returned to the dining room, laughter began to fill the air once again, but this time it felt different. I felt a renewed sense of belonging and an understanding that both Tom and I had work to do, but at least we were in it together. The cracks in our marriage were still there, but perhaps they could lead to something beautiful if we chose to fill them with compassion and commitment.